Every wound tells a story.
My sister's laughter still echoes in my head from that day in the lawyer's office. "Wow, really? You got the old wreck," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her voice had that familiar tone, sugar-coated cruelty that made people laugh along without realizing they were helping her twist the knife. She flipped her glossy hair, crossed her legs, and smirked at me. "I got the company, the stocks, and Dad's office downtown. You got the termite hotel." The others chuckled awkwardly, avoiding eye contact. But Leah didn't care. She never did. She'd always been the golden child, the one who got the spotlight, the praise, and the easy path. I sat there, quiet, holding the pen the lawyer had handed me, watching the ink pool in the signature line as if it too hesitated. The mahogany table gleamed under the fluorescent lights, the air thick with expensive perfume and unspoken judgment. But what Leah didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Dad had been far more deliberate than anyone realized. He'd played a longer game, one that wouldn't reveal itself until she'd already lost everything she thought she'd won. Dad died on a Wednesday morning in March, a sudden heart attack. He was 67. For most of my life, I'd believed he was unbreakable, the kind of man who didn't fade, just endured. The funeral was held at St. Augustine Church, the same place he'd married Mom 30 decades ago. The church smelled like lilies and candle wax. The air was heavy with incense and nostalgia. I arrived early, alone. I sat in the front pew, staring at the closed casket wrapped in the old naval flag he'd kept from his service days. He'd fought in the Gulf War, came home and built something from nothing, a logistics company that became his pride. Leah arrived late, as always. She swept in like a celebrity, heels clicking on marble, her black dress cut a little too perfectly. She didn't cry. She shook hands, exchanged polished smiles, and whispered condolences like she was closing a deal. That was Leah, always performing, always winning. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the kid who fixed things, who listened more than I spoke. She was the one Dad bragged about at dinner, the one who made everything look effortless. Even that day, in his death, she somehow managed to make the room revolve around her. 3 days after the funeral, we gathered in the office of Wilson and Tate, the estate attorneys Dad had used for years. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and paper, the kind of space where secrets have a habit of echoing. I sat across from Leah, who was scrolling through her phone as if even death couldn't interrupt her schedule. Mr. Tate adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and began reading. His voice was calm, professional, detached, as though he wasn't about to drop a quiet bomb into our lives. "To my daughter Leah," he said, "I leave Sterling Logistics Incorporated, including all its assets, contracts, and operations, valued at approximately $5.2 million. Leah's smirk spread like wildfire. She leaned back, tapping her manicured nails against the table. "That's more like it," she whispered. Mr. Tate continued, "To my son, Aaron, I leave the family home at 142 Willow Lane and all of its contents." Silence. Then came the laugh, sharp, loud, condescending. "The house? The rotting one? Dad, really?" She looked around the room for allies. "That place should have been condemned 10 years ago." Her laughter bounced off the conference walls. Mr. Tate looked uncomfortable but didn't speak. The accountant avoided my eyes. I said nothing. I'd spent my entire life speaking less than her, and somehow silence had always felt more powerful. When I left the office, Leah was already on the phone bragging about her empire. I drove to Willow Lane without really planning to. Maybe I needed to feel close to him again. The old craftsman house sat at the edge of a quiet street lined with maple trees that had shed most of their leaves. The porch sagged slightly, the shutters were half-hinged, the air smelled of pine and dust. But standing there, I didn't see ruin, I saw history. The summers we fixed the fence together, the winters we huddled around the old furnace drinking cocoa Mom made from scratch. The place was worn, but it wasn't empty. It held echoes. I unlocked the front door. The hinges groaned, a sound I remembered vividly from childhood. Inside, the air was still and stale, like the house had been holding its breath since he left. His coffee mug still sat on the kitchen counter, a faint brown ring dried at the bottom. The calendar on the wall was still open to March, the month he died. I walked through each room slowly, touching the surfaces he once touched, tracing the dents on the furniture, the stains on the carpet, the quiet evidence of a life lived fully but simply. Upstairs, the hallway creaked beneath my feet. His room smelled faintly of aftershave and wood polish. His bed was perfectly made, corners folded tight, the way he always insisted. I stood there for a long time, not crying, not speaking, just letting the silence fill me. It wasn't until I began moving his dresser to clean behind it that I heard it, a soft, hollow sound, different from the rest of the wall. I froze. Knocked once. Hollow. 2 feet over. Solid. My heart rate started to climb. Something was hidden here. I knelt on the hardwood floor, my hands trembling slightly. The wall looked ordinary, a faded cream color, a few scratches from years of furniture being moved. But one section felt newer, as if someone had patched it carefully. I fetched a screwdriver from Dad's old tool cabinet. The handle was smooth from use, his initials etched into the metal in tiny letters, D-R-W. I pressed the edge of the screwdriver into the baseboard seam and pried gently. A small metal panel slid loose, revealing a keypad, old but functional. A wall safe. I exhaled a shaky breath. I tried the first number that came to mind, Mom's birthday, July 14th, 1960. The keypad beeped softly, and the lock clicked open. Inside was a small fireproof box. When I lifted it out, it was heavier than it looked. Inside lay 3 items: a sealed envelope with my name, a thick folder of documents, and a brass key tagged with First National Bank, Box 114. My hands shook as I opened the letter. The handwriting was unmistakable, strong, steady, and deliberate. He wrote, "Aaron, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you found what I needed you to find. I'm sorry for the confusion, and I'm sorry for the scene your sister probably made. But you need to understand, this was never about money. It was about knowing my children." My throat tightened. He wrote about Leah first, how proud he'd been of her drive, her ambition, her natural charm, but also how he'd watched arrogance replace empathy. He wrote about her hunger for recognition, how she equated power to love. Then came my part. "Aaron, you were always different, quiet, patient. You learned by fixing instead of breaking. You asked questions. You listened. You reminded me of myself before life hardened me. The house is just a doorway. The real inheritance is in the vault key. I've been setting things aside for you since you were a boy. Investments, stocks, savings, things I didn't want Leah to know about because she would have demanded her share before understanding their worth. You never asked for anything, and that's why you've earned it. Make me proud. Dad." The room blurred through my tears. For the first time since the funeral, I let myself cry. Not out of sadness, but out of understanding. He hadn't forgotten me. He'd trusted me. The next morning, I drove to First National Bank. The clerk recognized the tag and led me to a quiet room with polished floors and heavy steel doors. Inside box 114 was more than I had imagined. Stacks of documents, USB drives, and certificates neatly organized. Decades of careful planning. When the bank manager, Miss Collins, finished tallying everything, she looked at me gently. "Your father was a very thoughtful man," she said. "According to our records, the total value of what's in here is approximately $3.5 million. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The air felt too thick to breathe. Dad hadn't chosen between us out of favoritism. He'd given each of us exactly what he thought we'd do something with. I left the bank with the key still warm in my pocket. Outside, sunlight spilled across the parking lot, but everything felt different, heavier, slower, real. I sat in my car for almost an hour, staring through the windshield, letting the realization settle. Dad had trusted me, in silence. He hadn't pitied me or forgotten me. He'd prepared me. That night, I went back to the house. The floorboards creaked as I walked through the hallway, but it didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt alive. I ran my hand along the door frame and whispered, "I found it, Dad." For the next few days, I barely left the house. I cleaned, repaired, sorted, and read through every paper in that folder. Stocks, bonds, land deeds. His handwriting on every margin, notes about growth, timing, patience. He hadn't just left me money. He'd left me a map. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Leah. Her contact name popped up with the same old photo, her smiling, perfect, confident. I hesitated before answering. "Hey, little brother," she chirped. "Guess what? My first deal as CEO just closed. $500,000 in new contracts. Dad would have been so proud." Her voice had that rehearsed energy I'd known all my life. Bright, but hollow. "That's great, Leah," I said evenly. "Yeah, well, you know me. Laughed. Built for this. Anyway, how's the fixer-upper? You still living in Dad's shadow over there?" I paused. "It's home," I said simply. She laughed again, a dismissive little sound. "Your call, Aaron. Your funeral." Then she hung up. I stared at the phone for a long moment, the quiet ringing in my ears louder than her words. I didn't tell her the letter. I didn't tell anyone. Some truths, I thought, are meant to unfold on their own. Months passed. I focused on the house, repainting, rebuilding, breathing life back into what she called the wreck. Each board I replaced felt like repairing a piece of myself. Meanwhile, Leah's name started popping up in business headlines. Small mentions at first, then louder ones. Sterling Logistics faces delays in key contracts. Leadership shift raises questions about stability. She called again, this time at midnight. Her voice was different, thinner, rushed. "Hey, Aaron, time out. Quick thing, do you still have some of Dad's old savings accounts open? Just for a short-term transfer, like $50,000. I'll pay you back in a week." "No, Leah," I said quietly. "You're kidding." "I'm not." She sighed sharply, her confidence cracking for the first time. "Dad would have wanted you to help me. Dad wanted you to learn. That's not the same thing." Weeks turned into months. Every call from Leah became more frantic, more hollow, more desperate. At first, it was 50,000, then 100, then 2. Each time, I said no. She called me jealous, ungrateful, cold. But I'd heard that voice before. Not hers, but Dad's voice, echoing from years ago. Sometimes the best help you can give someone is to let them face the storm they created. So I stayed quiet. I watched from a distance as the empire she'd bragged about began to crack. Through quiet whispers in business circles, I learned she'd fired half the senior staff, the very people who had built the foundation with Dad. She called them dead weight. Those same people took their clients with them. The contracts fell apart one by one. Investors withdrew. By the 6th month, even the company's website had stopped updating. Leah called again, but her tone had changed completely. "Erin, please," she said softly. "I just need a bridge loan to get through this quarter." I said no, again, not with anger, but with finality. "This isn't you. You're not cruel." "I'm not. But Dad didn't leave me money to fix your mistakes. He left me peace, and I'm not giving that up." She hung up without a word. By the 9th month, Sterling Logistics declared bankruptcy. The creditors came for the buildings, the vehicles, the accounts, everything she'd once boasted about owning. The empire she'd mocked me for not having was now nothing more than paperwork and debt. I found out through a cousin that she'd moved into a rented apartment in Raleigh, working part-time as a consultant. Her name no longer appeared in any headlines, only silence. For a long time, I thought I'd feel satisfaction, but all I felt was stillness, like the world had simply corrected itself. I stood on the porch one evening, watching the sunset fall over the yard Dad and I once tended together. The repairs were almost done now. The porch gleamed with new paint, the windows caught the light, and the garden, Mom's garden, was full again. Somewhere deep inside, I realized I hadn't been given less. I'd been given time. And time, unlike anything Leah inherited, doesn't collapse. It's been nearly 2 years since Dad passed. The house on Willow Lane doesn't look like the same place anymore. The paint is fresh, the porch rebuilt, the roof repaired. The once silent garden hums again. Bees moving between lavender bushes. Sunlight pouring through the oaks he planted decades ago. I started a small woodworking business in the back shed, using the same tools Dad left behind. What began as a hobby turned into something real. Orders from neighbors, custom furniture, even local cafes asking for handmade tables. It's not an empire, not a multi-million-dollar company, but it's mine. Each morning, I wake up before sunrise. I brew my coffee in the same chipped mug Dad used and sit on the porch, watching the mist lift off the yard. There's peace here, the kind that money never buys. Sometimes I still think about Leah. We haven't spoken since the day of the bankruptcy. I've seen her name once or twice on small company websites, business listings, but never in the way she used to crave. I don't hate her. I never really did. But I've stopped carrying the weight of what she took or what she laughed at. One afternoon, while sorting through the old workshop drawers, I found something I hadn't noticed before. Another envelope, yellowed and folded into the corner of a toolbox. It was sealed with a small piece of wax, the kind Dad used when sending real letters. Inside, just a single line in his handwriting. If you ever doubt yourself, build something with your hands. Creation is proof you're still alive. I stood there for a long time, the paper trembling between my fingers. That one sentence said more than every speech I'd ever heard from him. He hadn't left me wealth, he'd left me purpose. The evening light spilled across the room, turning the dust in the air gold. I realized then that the inheritance wasn't in the safe, or the stocks, or the house. It was in the patience he taught me, the quiet, the endurance. Last month, I drove back to the cemetery for the first time in over a year. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that softens sound. I parked beneath the same oak trees that lined the edge of the lot and carried a bouquet of white roses, Mom's favorite. Their scent mixed with the damp air as I walked toward the twin headstones. Dad's name was carved clean and simple beside Mom's, the dates separated by a dash that now held everything they'd ever been. I sat on the old wooden bench facing them, the same one Dad used to sand every spring. For a while, I didn't say anything. Then, quietly, I began to talk. I found the safe and the letter. You were right about everything. Leah had to lose it to see what mattered, and I had to be still to understand it. A soft wind rustled the oak branches above. Somewhere nearby, a bird sang, sharp and brief like punctuation at the end of a sentence. I said after a pause, I forgave you, for making it feel like you loved her more, for staying silent when I needed to hear otherwise. You weren't ignoring me, you were preparing me. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the wind, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, the faint hum of life carrying on. There was no anger left, no pride, no need to prove anything, only understanding. As I stood to leave, I placed the roses gently between their graves. Before walking away, I whispered one last thing. You gave her what she wanted. You gave me what I needed. And that's how we both learned who we really were. Driving home, I passed the old office building of Sterling Logistics, now emptied, the company logo half faded on the wall. For a moment, I stopped at the light and looked at it, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. Dad had been right all along. What we inherit isn't always what we hold in our hands. Sometimes it's the lesson that stays long after everything else is gone. When I got home, I sat on the porch, the air warm and still. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't ache anymore. I took a deep breath and smiled. If this story found its way to you, remember this. The greatest inheritance isn't what you receive, it's what you become. If stories like this remind you of something in your own life, a lesson, a loss, a moment that changed